Friendship is supposed to feel equal and safe, but one of the least discussed dynamics in close relationships is silent inferiority. People rarely admit when they feel smaller than their friends. Instead, they mask it with humor, humility, busyness, or even exaggerated support. Because it goes unspoken, it quietly reshapes the emotional atmosphere of the relationship. The common misconception is that inferiority shows up as obvious jealousy. In reality, it's much subtler. It lives in tone shifts, body language, topic changes, and private self-criticism. It begins internally and, if left unexamined, slowly turns connection into comparison. One of the clearest signs is that they downplay their own achievements. When something good happens to them, they minimize it. A promotion becomes just luck. A major accomplishment becomes no big deal. Compliments are deflected quickly. This isn't simple modesty. Chronic self-minimizing is usually protective. If someone already feels inferior in the friendship, claiming success feels risky. Recognition invites comparison. And if their self-worth is fragile, being evaluated feels dangerous. So they shrink themselves before anyone else can. Another sign is subtle comparison woven into ordinary conversation. It doesn't sound competitive, it sounds observational. They point out how you're ahead, more established, more accomplished. They frame themselves as behind. These comments aren't neutral, they are self-positioning statements. Humans naturally compare themselves to those around them, but when someone feels inferior, comparison becomes constant and self-critical. Instead of seeing different paths or timing, they interpret differences as personal deficiency. Over time, this comparison changes the emotional tone of the friendship. It starts to feel like measurement, rather than mutual growth. You may also notice that their energy shifts when you win. They say the right words, they congratulate you, but something in their presence changes. The excitement feels thinner, the engagement shortens, the conversation pivots quickly. Upward comparison can inspire people with secure self-worth, but it can threaten those who already feel behind. Your success becomes evidence in a case they are building against themselves. They are not necessarily resentful, they are uncomfortable. And discomfort often expresses itself as withdrawal, rather than confrontation. Another pattern is overemphasizing their struggles. There is nothing wrong with talking about hardship. Honest vulnerability strengthens relationships. But when someone feels inferior, they may lean heavily into narratives of difficulty, especially in contrast to your progress. Conversations begin centering on how hard things have been for them, how unfair circumstances are, how others have advantages. This can become a way to explain the gap. Instead of confronting painful internal doubts, they externalize the reason for difference. It protects their sense of identity. If the struggle is the main storyline, then falling behind feels justified rather than personal. Constant reassurance seeking is another common sign. They repeatedly ask if they're doing okay in life. They want to know if you think they're smart enough, successful enough, worthy enough. Everyone seeks reassurance occasionally. The difference here is frequency and dependency. When someone secretly feels inferior, reassurance becomes emotional regulation. It temporarily quiets the belief that they are less than. But because the core insecurity hasn't changed, the reassurance never lasts. Over time, this can create an imbalance where you feel responsible for stabilizing their confidence. Sometimes inferiority expresses itself through strange, unnecessary competition. You mention a small accomplishment and they respond with a bigger one. You start a new hobby and they emphasize how long they've already been doing it. The competition feels kind of out of proportion to the moment. This happens because when someone perceives a gap in important areas, they look for smaller arenas where they can regain footing. It's rarely conscious. It's just a way to restore internal balance. But honestly, healthy friendships don't require a scoreboard. When comparison dominates, even trivial moments can start to feel like performance reviews. One of the most painful signs is distance when the perceived gap grows too wide. If your life trajectory shifts significantly, maybe you change careers, enter a healthy relationship, move cities, or develop new confidence, they may slowly withdraw, not dramatically, just gradually. Contact decreases, invitations lessen, conversations lose depth. This withdrawal is often protective. Proximity to your progress just intensifies their comparison, and distance reduces that emotional discomfort. They may interpret their unease as incompatibility rather than insecurity, but the underlying driver is often a painful sense of falling behind. It's important to understand that feeling inferior to friends does not make someone malicious. It actually makes them insecure in a culture that constantly ranks and evaluates people. The real problem isn't the feeling itself, it's the silence around it. When inferiority goes unexamined, it quietly transforms friendship into hierarchy. If you recognize these patterns in someone else, resist the urge to shrink yourself just to preserve comfort. Diminishing your growth to protect another person's insecurity, it really breeds resentment. At the same time, try to approach the situation with awareness rather than accusation. Often, beneath subtle competition or withdrawal, there's shame, not hostility. And if you recognize these signs in yourself, that awareness is, honestly, quite powerful. Inferiority often develops in environments where worth was conditional, where comparison was constant, where achievement determined love or approval. Those patterns don't just disappear automatically in adulthood. They follow us into our closest relationships. The work is differentiation. Your path is not your friend's path. Their timeline is not a verdict on yours. Success is not a limited resource. When you really internalize that, someone else's growth becomes information rather than a threat. Real friendship isn't built on equal outcomes. It's built on equal dignity. You don't have to match your friends in income, milestones, or visibility to stand beside them as an equal human being. On It's All Psychological, we explore the uncomfortable dynamics people usually avoid naming. Because when you understand the hidden forces shaping behavior, you stop personalizing every shift in energy and start responding with clarity. If this conversation helped you see your friendships or yourself a bit more honestly, subscribe and share this video with someone who values depth over surface advice. The more we understand the psychology behind comparison and insecurity, the freer we become in our relationships.